Hello, everyone. Welcome to ITL Voices Season 2. We hope you enjoyed every bit of the last season. We will be kickstarting the season with none other than the co-founder and director of ITL Network, Kenny Okunola. Kenny is an associate at Dentons Corporate Group. Based in Calgary, he has been practicing transactional law, which focuses primarily on capital markets, mergers and acquisition, corporate finance, corporate reorganization, and corporate governance matters. Kenny has practiced in Lagos, Nigeria for several years as an associate in law firm and legal counsel at a large non-bank financial institution, supporting business executives on legal and compliance related issues. Kenny is also a part-time instructor of Canadian Administrative Law at the School of Global Access Bow Valley College. Kenny was recognized by the Alberta Council for Global Cooperation as a part of Top 30 Under 30 initiative in 2021 and was nominated by the Calgary Black Chambers for the Achievement in Law Award. Welcome, Kenny. I'm so happy to have you here today with us.
Thanks a lot, Ash. I'm glad to be joining you on ITL Voices today.
Oh, I'm really happy that I'm the one interviewing you today. Can you tell us more about your journey so far in Canada as a legal professional, and how did you eventually break into the legal talent market in Canada?
Yeah, thanks again, Ash. And I guess that's a $1 million question. That's a question every internationally trained lawyer that has probably been on this program has had to answer at one point or the other. My story is quite similar to that of many ITLs in Canada. I decided to move to Canada and I left everything behind, which is quite an important thing to really remember as ITLs that are all going through this journey, that irrespective of whatever the system tells you that you are, you should always remember that you did something that most people in the system can never even imagine to do, which is to basically pack your bags and decide to say you're going to a country or a place where you probably you probably don't know anyone, probably have no connections, no network, no family, absolutely nothing whatsoever. So same story for me. Decided to move to Canada after several years of practice in Nigeria. And I would say I probably don't need to re-emphasize this. An average ITL has probably practiced for 5 years and above before leaving their country. I do know there are some ITLs that are fresh graduates, and there are some ITLs that originally grew up in Canada but decided to go abroad to study and then return back to Canada. But an average immigrant ITL that's moving to Canada for the very first time has practiced for several years before moving down here. And, I'm not an exception too. In terms of my early journey before leaving Nigeria, I initially started out in private practice, worked a little bit in the not-for-profit sector, also worked in-house for like the last 3 years of my stay in Nigeria before moving down here. I would say I sort of experience a little bit of everything. In Canada, the interesting thing is that the articling year is focused on getting you exposed to a little bit of everything. If your article at, say, a national law firm, you get to rotate, between different practice groups like the real estate group, the corporate group, litigation, maybe in some insolvency, banking and finance. And I would say my early days in Nigeria kind of also gave me exposure to that. And so coming down to Canada, I kind of already knew what I wanted to do. I kind of already had a focus on the kind of practice I would like to maintain when I moved to Canada, which is of course, corporate law practice. And, on arriving in Canada, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to practice as a lawyer for quite some time. There was lack of information at that time. I just assumed, okay, I won't probably be able to practice for some time. I should probably get a job, as a compliance officer, because I was once a legal and compliance officer at a non-bank financial institution in the country then. So working as a compliance officer was a plan B for me. The plan B didn't work out because I ended up in a law firm at the end of the day anyways.
So as we all know that you are the co-founder of ITL Network and the founding president of this amazing organization that we all are a part of. How did you come about the idea of starting this network?
Like I shared earlier, a little bit about a little bit of insight into my story, moving to Canada, starting afresh as a new immigrant in this country. As at the time I moved, there wasn't a lot of information as at that time. There were bits and pieces here and there. And I personally noticed that, the information available was based on who you knew, who introduced you to who, right? So it wasn't something that was just readily accessible. As a matter of fact, you would be surprised that I didn't even know about the NCA process before I moved to Canada. That's a radical shift to what we have right now, because now we have people writing the NCA exams before they even have a visa. I chat with ITLs all the time, and there are even some ITLs that volunteer with the ITL Network in the past, and they were in their own countries, they were already interviewing for articling positions, they were already done with their NCA exams. I even had a chat with about 2 or 3 of them in this recent recruits season that was just concluded. One is in India, one is in Jamaica, one is in Nigeria, one is currently in the US. And they are done with their NCA exams. They are interviewing for articling positions. Some even got articling positions. Some didn't get because obviously the firms weren't convinced they were going to get a visa and all that. But the point is, as at that time, I practically moved to this country thinking, whatever happens, happens. I'm not going to starve. I'm going to figure out my way, and all that. But we realized that wasn't sustainable. And we felt like, we also lacked that community. We lacked the community, we lacked the requisite information, and information makes a lot of difference in this licensing journey. Because if you have the right information, you can make decisions on time. There are some things that I wish I knew, but I would have done differently. For example, I didn't get an articling position until about 3 years after I finished my exams. Some people get articling positions even before they even write the exams. As a matter of fact, I know 2 people already that are set to, resume an articling position by next year, and they are still writing their exams. Some even just got the assessments. So sometimes I wish I had done that. I would probably be like a 4th-year, in practice right now, if I had done something, if I had known something like that. So we wanted to be that difference. We wanted to be able to transfer information from people that had them or people that still have them, but they don't need it, to people that actually really need it. Because once you're done with your exams, you're done with your articling year, you're an associate, the information on how to get that job isn't useful to you anymore. It's something that's useful to someone else. That was the main reason why we decided to start the ITL network, and also create that sense of community, so people don't ever feel like they are alone in the journey. Because every stage of this journey is a daunting stage, and people at that stage think it's the end of the world. When you are trying to immigrate to Canada, you think it's the end of the world to get a PR or get a visa. When you eventually move down here and you're trying to get your first job, you think it's the end of the world again. When you're writing your exams, you think it's never going to be over. When you're looking for an articling position, you think it's never going to happen. But the truth is, every stage is going to feel like that, which is why it is a community of people that have gone through that stage similar to what you're also going through. Then it's a bit easier for you to realize that, oh, it's not the end of the world. This person did it and they're alive, so I'm going to do it. And when you see people that look like you, because it's easier when you see people that look like you, that have done something, and they are much more closer to your generation than probably seeing a Canadian that's a partner of a law firm. It's difficult to just identify with that person that's a Canadian and be like, oh, I'm going to be like this person, when the person was in fact born here, they went to law school here, they probably have all the connection and all the network. But if an ITL from Nigeria, for example, specifically Lagos, Nigeria, sees me in Canada at the national law firm, they'll be like, oh, Kenny did it. He doesn't have 2 words. I can do it too. So, that community, that sense of community is really important in this process. And of course, there were several other things we wanted to do. We wanted to be able to advocate for ITLs, we wanted to be able to advocate with the different stakeholders, the law societies, the law firms, create a mentorship platform, an opportunity for people to actually share information on a more structured platform, make very, very important partnerships with relevant organizations, give ITLs some clout in Canada. Because another challenge at that time was most of the firms didn't even understand, they didn't even understand the NCA process. If an ITL was appearing for an interview and you tell them, oh, I'm done with my NCA exam, the next question was going to be, what is the NCA? And they didn't know that the NCA process was something that is arguably even tougher than than a traditional law school. Because a traditional law school system, you have professors that are very accessible. You can potentially knock on their doors and say, I'm very, very confused about this. You have a lot of resources and materials. But the NCA process isn't like that. The NCA process is largely a self-study program. You have to study all by yourself, get your own textbooks, make your own notes, and then write the exams and actually pass an exam that you haven't had anyone, no one had, taught you about the courses or how to understand anything about it. I was just saying with someone the other day, when I was initially planning to, move to Canada to do my LLM, and I was supposed to write some sort of statement of intent on Indigenous, Aboriginal law in Canada. I mean, I put together a very beautiful statement of intent, but moving to Canada and eventually taking the foundations of Canadian law, I realized that what I put together was below, way below par. And that's just to let you know how helpful it is to actually go through traditional law school in this country compared to trying to self-study by yourself. But that's what we have to do. The other alternative is for you to pay these schools about $40,000, which is arguably a lot of money for new immigrants in Canada. Some people end up doing it because they don't have a choice. ITLs from civil law jurisdictions have to go to an actual law school before their credentials are recognized in Canada, which is one of the challenges of going through this process for people like that also. I know the ITLs from the common law jurisdictions don't have to do that, but it's still like a major challenge for ITLs from civil law jurisdictions. So when you aggregate all of this together, you realize that it's a very tough process for an average ITL. So having the mental strength and the grit to go through this process and then getting to an interview, and speaking to members of a student recruitment committee, and then they try to belittle that NCA process as at that time and ask you, what is the NCA? Like, is this some sort of certification that you write? Is it just a letter that you get from the IRCC to say your credentials have been recognized? So we needed to also educate people in the legal community about the process it takes to requalify as a lawyer in this country for anyone that has been out of the system for a very long time. And for them to also understand that we are not just carrying a certificate of qualification that is saying our qualification is, equivalent to that of, someone that has a JD from Canada, but it actually means something. So those are the things that we needed to address as an organization. And we felt like we'll be taken more seriously if we can structure our approach, have a community, have an organization to collectively address this and not just trying to address it individually. What we've seen in the past is people, breaking through these barriers, breaking into the legal talent market in Canada, becoming partners of national law firms, and then trying to start mentoring, ITLs to try as much as possible to help them. But then they eventually get overwhelmed because this problem is not an individualized problem. It is a systemic problem. And except the system itself is addressed, it's going to keep on recurring. And when we're talking about these issues don't just stop at the exam stage. It doesn't stop at the articling stage. There are several other issues that are even plaguing ITLs that eventually make it into these frames. And we are talking about microaggressions. We're talking about discriminations on different levels. We're talking about even things as minute as getting staffed on the right kind of work. Because it is one thing to get hired. It's another thing to be given the tools you need to succeed. Someone said something that was very, very amazing the other day, and the person said, law firms are hiring diverse people. But then after hiring those diverse people, they expect them to behave in the same way. So the first step is diversity, inclusion. Inclusion comes first, and then diversity, right? But the next thing is actually ensuring that those people you've hired that are not the same, that are different, of diverse backgrounds, are giving the right tools to succeed. So at this stage, we are not discussing equality. We're discussing equity, because equality is essentially saying you're giving everybody the same thing, assuming they have the same backgrounds, assuming they have the same network, assuming they're going to react in the same way. But equity is really understanding what someone lacks compared to the next person and ensuring you compensate for that so that they have equal opportunities to succeed. So those are the little things that we thought about that made us decide that we needed the ITL network. And so far, so good.
I think the network is doing great, and talking about all of the definitions of different microaggressions and macroaggressions which people go through, like especially coming from a different jurisdiction altogether. I think the platform has educated a lot, and I feel like there has been a shift in the industry itself, and it's just not a CPD requirement anymore for law firms, and it's more about like inclusion and also like providing equity thanks to initiative like ITL Network, and there are many more. So moving on, talking more about your journey, what would you say are the challenges affecting internationally trained lawyers in Canada, and would you say these challenges have been addressed so far?
Yeah, I think I mentioned some of these challenges earlier, and in terms of being addressed, obviously it's an ongoing conversation, if I can put it that way. It's a work in progress. I don't think it can ever be completely, addressed. And like I said, some of these challenges, include things like, number one, having the right information. Information makes a lot of difference. Information can, for example, when most immigrants move to this country, some of them don't even know about something as simple as the credit score. You'll be surprised. They don't know, because most of us come from systems where we don't use credit ratings whatsoever for individuals, maybe for companies, but we don't use it for individuals. You don't need a credit score to buy anything, so, and that's just, something very personal to people now. So now come to your career and professional lives. There are several things that if you don't know them, they can potentially affect your ability to make progress quickly. And so information is a very, very important thing, and it's a major challenge, which is one of the things that we are open to address. The ITL Network recently signed an MOU with the South Asian Bar Association of Toronto to produce an ITL manual. And we are hoping that the ITL manual can have an information from inception to conclusion of being, an ITL lawyer, an ITL in Canada, and hopefully have information regarding, immigrating to Canada, settling down in Canada, getting your credentials assessed, writing your exams, writing the provincial bar exams, getting an articling positions, even getting a job before you land an articling position, because at the end of the day, you still have to pay your bills, whether or not you become a lawyer, right? And also basic mental health for ITLs, even after you started practicing, because life doesn't end at getting an articling position. I can tell you that there's a whole lot more that happens after that stage. And major challenges, again, NCA exams, availability of that same information. And we are seeing more ITLs breaking into the legal talent market compared to what we had 5 years ago. Because now, if you look at the top national firms in the country now, at least you can identify one ITL, even if it's just in one of their offices across the country. There was a time that name the top 5 law firms in Canada and you wouldn't find a single ITL. So I think we're having a major shift. ITLs are getting a little bit of clout now in the country. Obviously, we are not where we want to be, and we are still hoping that we can get more ITLs into the system. But I think, that challenge is being addressed a little bit. And if you think of the recruitment challenge, it's a major problem because recruitment is almost like a pipeline in Canada. Candidates come in at the 1L stage, and they progress depending on the kind of law firms. Some law firms don't hire you to come back as a 2L candidate once you've done 1L. They just hire you directly to return as an articling student in 2 years. But some law firms allow you to join as 1L, come back as 2L, then return as an articling student. And when you get hired back, then you become an associate, and then you keep on progressing in your career. So it's almost like a pipeline. Now, JD students get in at one end of the pipeline, and they come out as associates. ITLs now try to break into that pipeline at the middle somewhere. And then they get rejection emails saying, oh, we're very sorry, but we are not recruiting right now. Or we're very sorry, while your skills and your qualifications match are very impressive. Unfortunately, we decided to go with candidates that their skills and qualifications more, aligns more with our hiring needs. Everyone has gotten so many emails like that. I got hundreds of those emails. So if you're watching this and you've gotten a lot of rejection emails, it is part of the process. So it's not a big deal. I've gotten hundreds. I became numb to rejection emails at some point, but I realized that the problem isn't you. The problem isn't me. The system is a problem, and you just have to find a way to break into the system. If you want to keep applying for articling positions, don't get me wrong, there are some law firms that genuinely hire for articling positions, but what happens is, say a law firm hires 10 articling students every year. They already, they had 12 summer students in 1L, and they had another 8 summer students in 2L. Those guys have already gotten offers to resume in 2 years. You moved to the country last year, and now you're done with your NC exams, hoping to get an articling position this year to resume this year, right? Guess what? Some summer students already got their offer letters to resume as articling students in this year 2 years ago when you were still planning to move to the country. So you see what I'm saying? It's a pipeline, and you essentially be wasting your time thinking you can get in the middle of the pipeline. Now, of course, there are some exceptions to these stories. There are people that actually do network their way into some of these positions. There are sometimes the law firms feel like their hiring needs has changed. Their business has gotten bigger. They need extra hands. Maybe they were initially targeting 10 articling students for the year, but their business got bigger and they felt like, oh, we can take on 2 more students. Or maybe a summer student declined the offer and says, oh, I have to move to Toronto or Vancouver with my partner. I don't think I can article in Calgary anymore. I'm so sorry. I have to decline the offer. Then a vacancy opens up, and then the law firm says, we are hiring for an articling position. And guess what? Hundreds of people are going to apply for that position. And chances are, a local student is probably going to make it in first. Chances that is very high probability. What I've come to realize as a solution to this is realizing that this is a systemic issue. And ultimately, you just need to find a way to understand the system. If you move to any country, you need to ask yourself, how are things done here? How can I do things the way they are being done here for me to understand how to leverage the system to my own advantage? It is settled that if you come in as a summer student, into a law firm, your chances of getting retained as an articling student is very high. And if you come in as an articling student already, your chances of becoming an associate is also quite high. As a matter of fact, except you do something that is drastically wrong, most of the law firms out there, the serious ones, they retain their summer student and articling student. It's only the firms that just do it for the statistics that hire 20 people and retain 10. But most of the firms out there, once they hire summer students, they retain them as articling students. When they have articling students, they retain them as associates. So if you understand that, you realize that, oh, maybe I should be applying for summer positions. Maybe I shouldn't, wait until the articling year to apply. And of course, another challenge that then comes up is the law firms are asking you, oh, but you've been practicing for 10 years before you moved to this country, but you're done with your NC exams. Why do you want to be a summer student? Are you even going to stick with us if you do get an offer before your articling year starts? So those are some of the things that you'll probably need to have at the back of your mind and be able to effectively address at the interview stage.
It's a long process, I think, like to navigate through all the challenges. It's commendable that you were able to navigate and were able to open such a nice platform for everyone to like understand more about the structure of the entire process, how to actually land to an articling job. I would just move on to another questions. Are there any upcoming initiative that the network is working on to address some more of these challenges?
Yeah, thanks. Like I mentioned earlier, we're working on the ITL manual in partnership with the South Asian Bar Association to put together, to put all this information together in a document and also in different volumes so that we don't have to guess our way through this process anymore as ITLs. Everything is readily accessible in terms of how you can network, how you can pass your exams, how you can access funding, what you need to know as you're going into the recruitment process and all that. We also recently launched a mentorship program last year in partnership with with Craig, and hopefully we can also leverage on some of the sister CRIAC organizations like TRIAC and ERIC. And essentially this mentorship program is designed to facilitate the flow of information also. Like I said earlier, information makes a lot of difference.
That's interesting to know. Looking forward to all the manuals. Any last parting thoughts?
Things are getting better for ITLs in Canada, and there is indeed light at the end of the tunnel. But irrespective of whatever stage you are, whether you're still planning to even move to Canada, it is worth it. Or you're still writing the exams, it's worth it. Or you're addicting right now, and you're drowning in work, I will still tell you it's worth it. Obviously, you face challenges. There are things that will happen to you that will make you feel bad about the idea of even moving to this country in the first place. But you can never give up, right? You just have to reassure yourself that, you were brave in the first place to have moved to this country. And if you were an ITL that left Canada to go study abroad, I know you face a different kind of challenge, which is that people think you were not adequate enough to get into a law school year. So they think you went away to where it was easy. But then it's still not easy to go to a different country for the very first time to go study law there. So all I can say is that you are brave. You are a brave person. We are all brave individuals. And we just need to get whoever we're working with, whatever firm we're working with, to believe that if we can do that, we can do anything.
Thank you so much, Kenny. It was so inspirational, and thanks for the last parting word that it is definitely worth it. I think things are totally opening up for ITLs, and thanks to your organization and many others like yours, which have helped ITLs and for the industry to open up for candidates like us. So thank you again, and I'm so happy to have you for our first episode of the second season. And thank you so much for your time again.
Yeah, thanks, Ash.